I grew up in a conservative Christian household, um, and so very much church twice on Sunday, Wednesday night, special functions and all that. Growing up in blue collar, lower middle class at the time, because there's definitely people who were worse off than us, but money was always an issue, and a family of six. And my father was a mechanic that from like the early 80s till the late 90s made the same annual wage, and added a kid every few years, so there's always that struggle. So he wasn't always present. My parents stayed together, but my father was always working to provide for that. My mother dealt with what I know now is a lot of depression, mental health, possibly bipolar, though she's not been diagnosed. My grandfather, her father, was an alcoholic, and my mother received a lot of physical abuse from her mother and a lot of verbal abuse from her father. This trickled down to my family. My mother is like stay-at-home mom, four of us. She felt like with the church and with the state of like the school system too, that she felt it was best to like teach us herself, because both my parents are very educated, though blue collar, and exposed us to a lot of different cultural things and such beyond what our kind of circle of influence had been exposed to. So I remember just with things of like whoever we dated, like my parents always said, like, I don't care what color they are, anything, like, as long as they love you as much as you love them, that's fine, right? And then my father told me at the age of 14, I think he said, don't get into drugs, smoking, all that stuff. Like, take care of your health. Don't play stupid with that. He's like, you're a white American male, and I could add like straight onto that now, but he's like, you have the deck stacked in your favor. He's like, it's fucked up. It's not how it should be, but that's a thing. Like, he's like, know that, don't abuse it, right? And don't take advantage of it. I mean, in an exploitative way. Obviously, you're gonna take advantage by default, but so this is the kind of environment I had going on one side. Meanwhile, I have three siblings, all of whom are gay. Turns out now. So this is like hilarious if you know anything about Christianity. So it's like a big joke from God to my parents. But my youngest brother came out first, and it wasn't until he was in middle school, almost into high school. But they were always gay as we look back, but the culture we grew up in, Christianity and the church, like a fundamentalist Christian, that definitely doesn't work. It's not allowed. It's sinful. It's shameful. It's something to be cured of or fixed or repent for, turn away from. So I spent a lot of my life defending my siblings against other people of why they weren't gay. Like, just because my brother's effeminate doesn't mean he's gay. And like fighting people, yelling at people, trying to defend my brothers, my sister. And but then at home, there's always like, whenever there's abuse, so coming back to abuse, whenever there's abuse, there's one side that's presented to the public, and there's one side that happens behind closed doors. So I remember when I was like 9, like a little younger, my next youngest brother had been abused, sexually abused by another kid, and it wasn't violent. In later times, I guess it was compliant, and you could say, kids experiment or whatever, but he was still victimized. He didn't know anything about that, a sexual act. Another kid brought that into his consciousness, and so that happened. We knew about that. There was a break from the family that was involved in that kid, but it was dismissed, even though it was addressed. It was just dismissed. My brother got really bad night terrors around that time as well. So, and so there may have been other things going on, I'm not sure, but I remember he would just have these night terrors, he'd freak out, he would be almost like lucid dreaming, and my parents would have to calm him down, pray over him, do these things to just get him back into like reality. Being at my grandmother's house, we're visiting for like a month, just he and I, and remember him waking up with a night terror, and him standing on the top of the stairs saying, "It's telling me to jump, it's telling me to jump." And then when he came to consciousness again, like probably 10, 15 minutes later, he said he had everything he ever feared was like chasing him, and then a voice was telling him to throw himself down these stairs. So all this, you think in the context of religion, that it's a spiritual thing, that either he has a demon or he's possessed or something because of that abuse, that shameful, sinful act. Even though he was the victim, it's like something that needs to be taken from his life for him to get better, or him to remove or release for him to be better. So, meanwhile, my mother is a stay-at-home mom with four kids. Mental health, history of abuse. We were the recipients of so much verbal and physical abuse. If my mom got set off, if she didn't have control, it was very much about control. When there was no control, she would lash out at us verbally. If there was any defiance, whether fabricated or true, she would release physical abuse and beat us. I was the oldest and was accountable for the doings of my youngest siblings. So if I wasn't setting a good example, I was being a bad example to them, and their wrongdoing was my wrongdoing. So I received so much physical and verbal abuse from my mother, who was the only presence in our life, because again, my father was like on a pedestal, because when we got to see him, when he was able to spend time with us, that was a wonderful thing. So the only control I had then was to perpetuate, give that same abuse to my siblings. So when I didn't have control because my mother stripped that, I had no way, I couldn't argue back, I couldn't release the anger that I had, except when she left, and then it was my siblings. So if they didn't do something I wanted, they didn't comply, or they talked back, I would beat them. I would physically abuse them, verbally abuse them. So fast forward later, my next brother, he too was abused. And then around the same time, my sister being abused by people we knew, family, friends, and they were being abused, sexually abused tandemly. And it came to light, but because of what we found out later were threats made to them, they wouldn't own it. They said, they said that they instigated it. So then the blame and shame was onto them. But really, they were being abused the whole time. But in that fear and the threats of everything, they owned it like, okay, it was me who did it. So then there was no comfort for the victim, because the victim is looked at as the predator. So my youngest brother acted out the most, and I think had a bit of the same wrestlings as my mother with just depression and such, that he was in the same way I was her in the abuse and the control, and we have very similar personalities. He had a lot of the same mental state of just like, if he didn't have order or something, like he has the comfort of knowing, how that goes. So he just acted out. He then became labeled as the bad kid. everything. It was like, well, yeah, he probably did it. He probably did it. Oh, so and so, blame it on him. He was just the loudest. He would be defiant. He was the only kid in the family that would set his jaw and just be like, fuck y'all. Like, not like, he wouldn't say that, but just as a kid, he would be the one that was like the strong-willed child that needed to be broken. And according to the church, is like, don't spare the rod, because then you're gonna like, so that kid went through so much shit. And when he did come out, he got so much hate from everyone, not only in the church, school, from me, because now the coin flips. Now I was defending my siblings of why, oh, they're not gay, this, that, and the other. And I bought the whole religious aspect, the construct of what we grew up in as like hook, line, and sinker. So although I was receiving physical abuse, I didn't receive any sexual abuse. Well, all my siblings did. So, and because I was very confident in whatever in different areas, I fit the mold as far as the culture we grew up in, so I didn't get as much static. But because I fit the mold so well, I just perpetuated that bigotry and hate. So I would call him, slanderous things and push him away and be like, don't touch me like that, or different things that are just horrifying, like unreasonable. And no one was his champion. So there's a point where you're the only one in the corner. The only thing you can do is swing, because nobody's on your side. So you got to punch everybody in sight to get out of the mess. So I remember the first time that my empathy kicked in, and I was like, I realized what I had been doing and what my brother was going through is he had said something about, we were just enemies for a long time, and he said something about my girlfriend at the time or something that just set me off. And my father heard us like going at it and came down to see what was happening. And my father was just like, I knew we always like tussled, but it always got broken up. So finally he was just like, they just need to get out of their system. So he just let it happen. I remember grabbing my youngest brother by his pecs under the underarms, grabbing him and throwing him into a pile of stuff, and again my father just let it happen, thinking we just needed to burn it out of our system. And my brother ran away that night, and it was like snowing, and he just had like a little vest thing, not like a jacket vest, but just a vest and shorts. And he took off, snowing, and walked all over the neighborhood. We went to go find him, and he's so smart. He like doubled back through his tracks because he knew he was leaving tracks in the snow. So he doubled back through all his tracks all over the neighborhood. Had to have been like an hour because we just kept circling. We're like, where the hell is he? 3 miles away at a friend's house, in the snow, in shorts and a vest. He walked to his friend's house, and later called my mother and said, so we knew where it was, or he was okay, but she didn't tell anybody where it was. And that night was when I was like, I've broken this kid down, like for no reason, like, and just cycling back of all this stuff. I don't even know what flipped the switch, but him running away and like that effort for him to escape, like that desperate, to escape. And I was like, I have to make I have to reach out, but I can't even reach out because I've given him no reason to like want to have a relationship, because I've hurt him and beat him so badly emotionally and physically. And so he was really into dyeing his hair at the time, and so I figured like once he came back to the house and everything, he was back, and I just figured I would start doing things he liked to do, but without telling him, just so there was some kind of relatability and like reaching out without him like, instead of me just be like, hey, you want to be friends now? Because like that wouldn't fly. So I dyed my hair, and then I was asking him just questions about like, I tried to bleach it and it came out all brassy because I didn't know about toners and all that. And he was all like, I was like, why do I look like Howdy Doody? Like, I thought it was going to be blonde. And so he told me a little bit about that. And gradually we were able to make those amends and heal that. And so now we're very close, but it was through all that abuse, all my siblings, and then as each one came out, my parents grew a little bit more where it wasn't as much of a backlash in that culture. But that hiding it, like, for me forever, I thought I am who I am today because of what I went through. And that's a lie. Anybody who's listening to this, like, that's a fucking lie. You're not who you are today because of what you went through. You're here today despite what you went through. Because when you say it's because you went through it, then that equals your success, your failure, anything, and that still controls you. And, like, you will perpetuate it. Because forever I thought, well, I was beaten, look how good I turned out. I'm going to beat my kids. I said that till the time I got married. And my wife gave me a different perspective on that. It's just like, as I would tell childhood stories, she'd be like, that's not normal, right? But that was my normal. And I would laugh about it, like, oh yeah, I got my ass beat, like, no. And just even having pets, not even having kids and just getting frustrated. Animals do whatever. You leave food out, an animal's gonna eat the food. Like, it's not on them, they're gonna eat it. I'll get so, like, enraged, like, grab the cat, throw the cat, yell at it and everything. And the biggest fear I had was, like, if I ever had kids, I don't know when I'm gonna snap and do what was done to me to my kids. And I was like, I can't have kids because of that. And, like, I've been able to, like, unwind that through the help of my wife and everything, of that different perspective and healing mentally and everything. Reaching out to my siblings. We've all kind of stepped away from the church. We still have elements of spirituality and such and can talk. And what we later found out was those family friends who my siblings were owning, like, that they were instigating this sexual abuse. Turns out we found out they had just been threatening them with harm and such, more harm, I guess. So that coming to light and actually being a champion for my siblings, and yeah, so you could even believe it, but if you don't stand up, if you don't protect the victim, you can easily just be dismissive. And it's like, well, you started it, so it's your fault, so whatever. And that's as bad as saying, like, nah, that didn't happen to you, So believing, taking action, and even if they are the predator, like, why? Like, why is that? What else is going on? For me, I was beating the shit out of my siblings. And at school, if somebody set me off, I had this rage. It was like, why is this kid so angry? It can't just be because he's a bad kid, Somebody's lashing out for some reason, So, so now it's like I'm having a better health and time of just like how do I be a champion for the people who have no voice? So for my siblings now, for being gay and just because it's an issue in our society, how do I defend them until a point when that's a non-issue? And then for friends of mine who are Black, Latino, like, of people of color, like, I have a megaphone that I could talk through. That there's people who can't. Like, I can say shit and not suffer repercussions at this time. So if I don't talk through the microphone, nobody hears it, So until that's a non-issue, I have to do that. And again, it's not telling people what needs to happen. You gotta listen. You gotta learn. Because I haven't experienced what each individual person has experienced. It doesn't matter race, sexuality, anything. Everybody has a different experience. And you can't touch them and figure out what's happening until you listen and learn from that, you know. Um, so yeah, it's hard, and it's like sometimes you feel that emotion and you revert back to acting in emotion. So anger, hurt, and you want to inflict that on somebody else. I want you to hurt like I hurt, or I have this anger and I have nowhere to direct it. So you get to be the recipient. So it's like, how do you unplug from that with media, with people who disagree with you? Like, how do you listen to somebody you disagree with or has hate coming from their heart? How do you respond to that, or just embrace it, honestly, let it happen without the reaction? The reaction is what causes fire. Like, you know, seeing these violence of the police and different things in the media, of bigotry in the church, abuse in the church towards children, towards people in the gay community. And you hear all these stories and you're just like enraged, like, let's go burn this place down, or sucker punch these people, or whatever. That's the emotion. That is what perpetuates the hate, the violence, the abuse. And so it takes a long time. I haven't fully unplugged from that emotion in the sense of a reaction. But yeah, just like, it's cathartic to know that I made it through that. It's going to take time to get away from it, you know. But I don't have to engage it. And they say blood's thicker than water, but sometimes there's poison in the blood. So you got to cut it out. And so, anyway, that's my story.